Welcome back for another custom card review. Today we are going to be talking about 5 cards that have the keyword discard plus my own. I'm very excited to show you guys the winners of last week's challenge, but here is the next challenge. The keyword is going to be no ability and the theme is going to be Marvel. Now, this is going to be the last one of the basic keywords that are in the game for at least a little bit. The next challenge after this, it's going to have a bit of a different twist. I'm excited to announce that next Sunday. We're going to be doing these every Sunday. I know I said Monday originally. We're going back to the original Sundays. And if you want to submit, you want to get involved, join the BERRYVERSE Discord. There's a link in the description below. You can create a custom card using that link. You post one submission in the weekly challenge channel. And if you want to resubmit, delete your own, put the new one in there, you're good to go. And anyone who submits, whether it's good, bad, or whatever, doesn't matter. If you submit a card, you have a chance to win a season pass. This week, Leo CD won the season pass, so I will hit you up on the Discord, and you can choose whether you want the October one or want to wait for November. I will hook you up. And really quickly, guys, if you do love this series and you want to see more custom cards, definitely be sure to hit the like button below and subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. I'd greatly appreciate it. It shows me that you guys are interested in this and motivates me to keep doing it. All right. Let's get to this week's top 5. But quickly, we're going to start off with my card here, and that is Blood Wraith. So this is a 4/7 ongoing. Your draws are discarded instead. That's it. That's all it's going to do. So every time you draw a card, let's say you play this on turn 4, turn 5, that draw, you're not going to get to your hand. It's going to be discarded instantly. Same with your 6th draw, your turn 7 if Magic and Limbo are out there. Maybe you have something that draws you cards. Maybe your opponent played Maximus and it draws you cards. They're going to get discarded. Maybe turn 1 Sakaar was on the board. This ended up being thrown out to the field on turn 1. All of your other draws are going to be discarded. But we can make this work, right? This can actually work to our benefit. Like if we discard Swarm. If that's one of our draws, we're going to have 2 copies, 0/3s in our hand. That's pretty nice instantly. Then you can chain that with other combinations. Or guess what? Howard the Duck coming in clutch, going to let us know what we're going to draw, which kind of gives you an idea of, well, do I want to play Blood Wraith on turn 4? Because my turn 5 draw is going to be, I don't know, something like Hela maybe. And I'm, okay, well, let's hold off. Draw Hela, play Blood Wraith on turn 5 so that the next card that we discard happens instantly. And then we have a setup for Hela. So that's kind of what I was thinking about this card. It also helps with Morbius because, you know, if we play it on turn 4, you get 2 cards discarded. That's 4 power. That's pretty good. In general, it's going to work with the discard, synergy, those kind of decks. The only reason I'm giving it 7 power is because it's not the most consistent one out there. Even if we're discarding 2 cards, Hellcow does that instantly, right? On a single turn, whereas Blood Wraith is going to kind of stagger it across turns. So that's kind of the comparison that I was thinking of using Hellcow as the alternative. This is an ongoing effect too. So maybe you just want to discard 1 card and then you shut it off. You use Enchantress or something like that and get rid of that effect. Also, maybe we even look to Viper this over so our opponent just doesn't draw cards anymore. It's like kind of like Black Widow, but a later game version that totally shuts it down. They can't do a whole lot with it. So there's some spicy applications here, I think, with this card. And I think it'd be a lot of fun. I think it would be an interesting route to take discard. So that's my card. That's what I came up with. The character I don't even fully understand. Seems to be some sort of entity that embodies the sword that the Black Knight uses. So maybe that's not really a legal use character, but it seemed fitting. You know, discard's all about those sword characters. So I just thought this was pretty neat. Anyways, that's what I came up with, but let's see what the community came up with in the Berryverse. Okay, so kicking us off at number 5, we have Robin's Mister Immortal. A 1/1. When you discard this from your hand, put it back with +1 cost and +3 power. Kind of reminiscent of Deadpool, right? You know, it's destroyed and then it goes back to your hand and it's double in power. This is a set amount of power, a high amount of power, but probably offset because discard is a little bit more difficult to do, especially when it's targeted, right? There's only so many cards that are going to enable us to discard Mister Immortal on repeat, especially because his cost is increasing turn over turn over turn every time we do this, right? not necessarily turn over turn, but every time we discard Mister Immortal. But one of the combinations that seems insane with this is Mobius and Mobius, because then it's always going to stick as a 1 and we're getting 3 power on repeat every time we discard this. Now, I can only imagine us discarding it maybe a maximum of 3 times, maybe 4 if you're pushing it, if you really get like the dream hand. But I'd say on average, 2 to 3 times, that's going to end you up at 7 or 10 power respectively. So a 110, a 17, that's cash money. That's amazing. But a 3, I don't even know what it would end up being, a 3-7 or a 4-10. That's pretty normal stat line for the investment that you had to put out to do this. You know, you used your clean wing discard to do this, etc. Your MODOK is going to just hit everything. So that's just great synergy. But you know what I mean? Like, if you don't actually have Mobius out there, this is like really balanced. And then the combination with Mobius is just kind of fun. So I think it just works. So I think it's pretty interesting. It's kind of like Swarm and Deadpool mixed, those 2 cards, but I thought it was interesting enough. I also like that it's increasing in its cost as you progress. As you're getting that power payoff, you got to worry about how expensive the card's going to be. Maybe there's a world where you discard cards too much and then you can't even play Mister Immortal because he ended up a 7 cost. I don't even know how much power you'd have. That would be wild. But anyways, a really cool submission, creative idea here, and cool art, very unique. It's such a funny character. I've seen you guys use this for like destroy challenges and stuff before, so it'd be pretty neat to see in the game. But thank you, Robin. Let's get to number 4. Number 4 is Albino Spino's Chimera. All right, so Chimera here is an on reveal, discard a card from your hand, distribute its power evenly to friendly cards, a 3/2. I did change the text slightly just because I think they had your other cards, and I just thought, I think the text of Ironheart uses friendly cards to friendly cards, so I just went with that terminology. I think it's the exact same effect and everything like that, but pretty interesting. The way I imagine this, okay, it would be broken. I thought of it 2 ways. It'd be broken one way, and it makes a lot of sense, and I like it the other. So the broken way is that this gives the card that it discards, let's just use Swarm as an example, okay, 3 power. You're probably trying to hit something else better, but we're going to use Swarm. Swarm, 3 power. You're giving all the cards on your board 3 power. That'd be crazy, right? Because it kind of says distribute its power evenly. The way I actually interpret this, the way I think it works, is that it's just going to go like 1 to one character, another one of that points of power to another character, and another point of power to the other character. It's not going to stack on the same card, which is pretty neat, because if you have 8 cards on the board and you discard APOC for the first time, who has 8 power, all your cards on the board are going to get +1 when you play Chimera, which is pretty neat. Like, that's just a big wave of stats. It's kind of like a Blue Marvel effect, but like a on reveal, and then you can maybe even stagger that with a Wong or something like that, because this is also an activator, right? It's actually doing the discard. It's performing the discard. It's not looking at like, what was your last discard, but it's random, right? It's random, like Swordmaster is, like Blade used to be. So got to watch out for that. You got to make sure your hand is good enough. Maybe it hits, you know, that APOC, which is fantastic, gets a lot of stats out there, or maybe it hits that X23 or just like that low value card in your hand. That's not so great. But then if we actually look at the amount of power, you know, you even hit that Swarm, that's 3 power. We're looking at now a 3/5. That's not too shabby in net value. And we discard it, which is a part of our strategy. So might be overtuned, might be a little bit too much because of the amount of variety and synergies here. But it's a really interesting effect of discarding from your hand to give power, right? It's usually we're just building up power in our hand through that APOC or whatever else, the buffing the Swarm so that they get a bunch of power and duplicate. I like giving the board power through our discord. I thought that was pretty neat. Thank you, Albino Spino. And let's get to number 3. Number 3, directs Mephisto. All right, so Mephisto here. First of all, the art looks unreal. So cool. I love what you did here. But a 4/0, so that Dracula stat line. When you play a card here, return it to your hand and discard it. This has the power of all cards discarded this way. Very, very cool. This is a discard engine, which I'm leading to think that this is overpowered. But it's a very cool idea. I would be curious how you guys would balance this in the comments below, or if you think it's balanced. The problem that I have is that now we can just discard all the cards that we want so long as we can play them. that swarm, you throw it down there, you get 3 power to this card, so you retain the power of the discarded card, you get it back to your hand. If we have 2 swarms, we just keep literally turn over turn over turn, throwing them at the Mephisto location, buffing it up to crazy heights, and getting more swarms back to our hand. Seems a bit bonkers. On top of that, if we can wave APOC, play APOC there, you're going to get a bunch of power in your Mephisto, you're going to get that APOC back to the hand, and then maybe we play APOC on turn 6, just cuz. And then you got Dracula out there as well at a different location who's going to reap the rewards of getting that APOC discard back to the hand from Mephisto, and then it discards it itself. Dracula does. So lots of power, lots of crazy potential. But here's the offset, right? Here's a pretty big offset. You can't necessarily play cards at Mephisto's location after you've put them down. You can move things over there or summon tokens or whatever else, but you can't play anything there anymore. It's just going to get discarded. So if your Mephisto ends up getting countered, you don't have a whole lot to fall back to at that location. And there's a couple big counters, right? Shang-Chi, first of all, you're probably getting over 9 power with whatever strategy you're trying to do. And then the biggest one is Shadow King. Just sets this back to 0. Ouch. So you got to watch out for those two. So that does help mitigate the balance here a little bit. But then there's even things like bounce, right? If we're throwing swarms back, we're getting them back to our hand and the copies and all that stuff. Your collector could start popping off. You could have a lot of cards in your hand for like a Devil Dino setup. There's just like a strategy in that route of just getting a lot of cards bounced back to your hand. And then discard strategies for Morbius as well. Like, oh my gosh, it's also discounted by Zabu because it's a 4 cost. But that's where I'm like, whoa, this is maybe a little bit too much. But very cool design, very creative idea here. I always love those kind of cards. I think they're the most interesting when they come out in Snap, when they're engines. They're really diving deep into a specific strategy, and you build your deck around it to just get that engine going of a lot of power over and over again for that big payoff at the end of the game. So I thought that was pretty cool. Very cool and very fitting for such a character, such a powerful character. So great submission, Derek. I keep mispronouncing your name, but great submission. Thank you. Let's get to number 2. Number 2, Goblin Box Khonshu. All right, so these top 2 are so good. I really like them. So Khonshu here is a 3/4 ongoing. Both players' hands are limited to 5 cards. Any additional cards are discarded. Very neat. So that's like if something is added to your hand, it's going to get discarded. If you're going to draw a card because your hand is full, that's just going right to the bin. Very cool application here. I think it's heavily favored to aggressive decks, right? You just want to play out, make sure you don't hit that threshold so that you're not discarding, or maybe you do want to discard, you put a bunch of stuff back to your hand. There's things like Swarm where I don't know how it'd work, right? APOC, I don't know how it'd work. If he's the 6th card that you draw and your hand is full, APOC just regenerates himself. So what happens then? He keeps just like discarding, game breaks. I don't know what we do there. I feel like maybe his effect just doesn't kick in and it's one discard and he goes to the bin permanently. Same with Swarm copies. They just don't. They get discarded and maybe it activates your Morbius, whatever, but there's like this inherent limitation on the hand and it just goes to the discard bin permanently. So I could see it working that way. That's the only hindrance with this card. Otherwise, I think it's a great design and very, very cool. The limitation of cards in the hand is fascinating. Really shuts down like quite a few decks that are maybe a little bit slower, right? Because then they have to play out that hand. They can't risk to just wait or else they're not going to end up drawing cards. Also, that Devil Dino can't get to its full potential. Maybe we're looking to run Master Molds. Send over those Sentinels so that our opponent, maybe they only had 3 cards in hand. Boom, they have 2 Sentinels in the hand that they can't get rid of. They're only playing with 3 cards for the rest of the game. They got to make sure to play those turn over turn or else they're not going to draw. That'd be nasty. I love that idea as well. So I thought this was a really cool card. The limitation on the player's hands, both a reciprocal effect too, that can be turned off because it's an ongoing effect. If your opponent doesn't like it, they just get rid of it. Or maybe if you don't like it anymore, you get rid of it as well. And maybe it hurts you more than it hurts them. Whenever it's a reciprocal effect, it can't be too broken, right? Maybe because we brought the right deck, but I don't see too many crazy synergies here outside of using like Master Mold to clunk up the hand, stuff like that. Then it's more on your opponent. What can they do? Can they make this work or can they not? And if they can't, they're going to be in a rough spot. So I thought this was a great card. Thank you for submitting this idea. Let's get to number 1, which might be one of my most favorite cards in a while. Number 1, we have Mark's Ironfire. Holy smokes. Okay, little backstory here too. Mark has been in the Berryverse since like the dawn of the Berryverse, okay? Contributing to every single challenge. And if you think I'm being biased because it's like a friend who's been in the Berryverse for a very long time, that is not the case, because Mark will tell you straight up that I haven't picked a lot of his cards ever in all the challenges that we have done in the last year. But Mark, you absolutely delivered with this card. And what I love about this, you might be looking at this and I'm going to talk about it, but you might be looking at it and think, well, that's just like so simple, basic, like that's not very exciting, okay? But when I look at this card, this is something that should be printed in the game. This is a Marvel Snap card through and through in my eyes, okay? So a 3/5, a good stat line. This card costs the same as the last card discarded. That's it. I freaking love this card. Like I just think this should be in the game. It's so interesting and it's balanced. Okay, so here you're probably thinking, okay, well, what do I do? So you use Clean Wing, you discard your swarm. Then you have a 2/5. Good value. We know this, but maybe we could stretch it a little bit more and get that swarm discarded again because it was 0, and then we get a 0/5, and that's great. It's literally like the Miles Morales or the Stature of self discard of that discard package. That's what it is. Just trying to make the deck work, doing its thing so that you get a cheap, high power card that you can just throw out there. Perfect value. But what happens? What happens later in the game? This can backfire because you probably want to discard your APOC at some point, right? You want to use Lady Sif or something of the like. And then your Ironfire is going to be a 6/5. Oh my gosh, we got to watch out what we're discarding here. Maybe your opponent waved when you wanted to discard something and now it's a 4/5. There's like ways where Ironfire is just not going to quite work out. And I love that. I love that it can. Because we discard X23, now it's 1/5, but we have the plus energy. It's basically free anyways. That's a great synergy as well. Or maybe our opponent plays Black Bolt or Silver Samurai, discarding something from our hand, which inherently changes the cost of Ironfire and just screws up our curve. So there's crazy ways that this card, and then it's also it's the last card discarded. It doesn't even have to be yours. So what if your opponent is running discard and they discard their APOC or whatever else, and then this is going to be more expensive. So there's all kinds of ways that the cost of this card could fluctuate all over. But I think it'd be really fun. You run like a Moon Girl with Swarm and Ironfire and maybe a few buffs as well, like Okoye, Nakia, these sorts of things. Just so that like turn 6, you got a free Ironfire, maybe 2 of them, free Swarms to throw out, and then America Chavez. And it's just boom, 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 bunch of cards. So much fun. I love this idea. And I know it's simple, but that's the best part about these custom card challenges. When you guys come up with a card that makes sense in the game, it's simple to understand. Anyone can figure it out. And also the art looks great here too, Mark. This is a great job. Through and through. Absolutely love this card. It's such a sleeper. It's such a sleeper pick. It's because it's not the most exciting, but there's layers to it. It's simple design. That's what I really look for. I think these are the best whenever I see them in the challenge. So great work, Mark. I think all you guys crushed it this time. Looking at all the cards here, there was fantastic submissions as well, all kinds of different ones. So thank you to all the berries who submitted cards. If you want to jump in on the fun, just get in the Berryverse Discord. There's no other condition other than that. I'm not even asking you guys to subscribe or anything like that, but you could to support the channel, support old Drew here. I'd really appreciate it. All right, thank you so much guys for watching the video, and I will catch you next time.